PlayStation Classic goes on fire sale. YouTube middlemen, movie stars are dead, and we're not going to have a Patreon exclusive this week. I'm going to give you the Cam Newton gift because I'm in a very gift-giving post-Christmas birthday kind of mood over here. But I've got a lot to complain about, so let's do this.
The recently canceled podcast with Don Fry.
Hey, how goes it? So, you guys had an okay Christmas, I imagine? You want to tell me what you got? Maybe hit up that Patreon, patreon.com/FunFry. $1 a month gets you full access to the recently canceled podcast with no advertisements in between, no chopped up video you have to kind of look at and click through on YouTube, none of that stuff. You want to tell me? Because I'll tell you what, I said I wouldn't do this, but I did. I returned my Sony PlayStation Classic because it wasn't looking good for it. I waited until there was a sale, and I figured, look, I'll return this. I've got the receipt. It's Walmart. Get that $100 back on the credit card, and then pick it up elsewhere, right? Because that day, Target had them in their checkout. This was like on the 22nd or 23rd of December. You could go to Target's website, add it to your cart to see the special pricing. And it's kind of like their way of discounting something without having to get into the price matching wars with Walmart. But elsewhere, people were getting even better deals. And before long, the day after Christmas, it's like officially $60, like $59.99, down from 23 days earlier, $99.99. Remember, this is a console that I had to go tell them was available the afternoon it came out at my local Walmart. A Walmart which sold out of NES and Super Nintendo classics at midnight of the launch. Now, I've said before, I think that their biggest issues here, the M rating, you're going to have a hard time justifying this as a purchase for kids. I think plug and play skews young that way. I didn't want that to rhyme, but it did. I'm saying that you give little Junior a game console that doesn't have discs or anything he can download, get you in trouble, have to sign in with the internet, none of that stuff. Simple setups skew young, and young kids are not interested in these IPs. You have an M rating, you don't have Mario, you don't have Crash Bandicoot, though kids would have to be like, what's Crash Bandicoot? Sony was in the business of appeasing the third parties in that time and less so on making their own content. I mean, hell, that's how you end up with a first generation console of that company having a mascot they didn't make. That's how odd that is. Meanwhile, we see that the Nintendo Switch is doing really damn good. Its sales are strong, and it's because the IPs are strong. And we see a lot of this coming on the heels of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, where almost every video game character you can name, or a layman can name, is featured in this quasi-fighting game. And isn't that the model of Nintendo right now? Nintendo, the new SNK. You have that Neo Geo where almost every game is first party, and people get behind it. Well, certain collectors do, and a lot of them after the fact, because they played the big red machine in the arcade, and now maybe they can have one in their game room, or they can spring for the AES. Well, the Nintendo Switch is the new Neo Geo. It's a system people buy just to play the first-party games. There's no one picking up a Switch for sports titles outside of Nintendo's, and the games that they do sell have Mario in them in some capacity, and they're the ones driving the sales. So did this teach us a lesson? I think it did. In fact, I think Nintendo has already told you what you don't want to hear in regards of a Nintendo 64 Classic, that it's not coming. Yeah, they just kind of sat on, what was it, a year ago? They preemptively picked up some trademarks, renewed them anyways. But they're not putting that out there. Nintendo sees Sony's disaster and they don't say, well, we know how to do this better. We could put together a Nintendo 64 Classic that people would buy next year. Nintendo instead sees the trend. Hey, we can't hype this up the way we could, and the licensing diarrhea is going to be too much to stomach. We know we can't get GoldenEye 007 on the N64 Classic, so we're not even going to bother trying with the N64 Classic. We see the trend of nostalgia dying off. Vintage video game prices are going back down, and people are not getting the plug-and-plays to play games that they could emulate on their much more powerful computers that we all assume we have. These are things not happening. If a Nintendo 64 Classic were to come about, I think it would have to have robust online features. Suppose it's 2019. Do you really want to play 4-player split-screen GoldenEye with your bros? You don't. You would rather do that online. We want to see options in the emulation that go beyond the look of the old console. Maybe have a retro shader set, with your scan lines, and then some without the scan lines, right? But then have your like super deluxe beyond what the N64 was capable of. Remove that fog, possibly. We want to see that out of the PlayStation Classic too. It has the power to give us everything up converted, to go high res mode, and yet it doesn't. The N64 Classic would need to deliver an online experience, and the controller is going to be so cumbersome. We're looking at a very large box for even one controller to be packed in. The price would have to be $100 plus. I don't think it's happening. Nintendo said they are discontinuing their classics, the NES and the Super Nintendo, and by that means, I believe they're saying we're discontinuing the classics going forward.